Go.
All right. So I'm going to talk about how to review patches, how to create patches in Sage, and work with Mercurial and work with the trac server. So and questions are welcome. Feel free to hop in as we go. A lot of what I'm going to talk about is in the Sage documentation. So there's this Sage developers walkthrough, and that's not the right thing there. So walking through the development process. And a lot of this talks about just sort of generic Mercurial, and there's something called Mercurial queues, and that's about halfway through this document. So starting with Mercurial queues. So if you want to go back and sort of start from the beginning and see how some of this works, that's where you want to go. Earlier in this document, there is a little bit of text here. So you need to install Mercurial. I get it as an Ubuntu package. If you're on the Mac or something, or even Windows, you can just get it from the Mercurial site and pull that in and install it. Sage has a Mercurial built in, so you can do a lot of this from the Sage command line, or probably with Sage dash something, and work with it that way. I'd like to just have a system copy. So you really need to make a small configuration file. So this is .hgrc in your home directory, and those are sort of the minimal contents. Sage likes you to use your real name on patches, so that's the Gauss there, and then your email address. And it's good to sort of, it helps when people are going back and looking for old things in the record, if you sort of stick with one version of that. Mercurial queues is an add-on to Mercurials. It's built in, and that's the way it should be. Equals, you don't put anything there. That's just sort of a flag that says, go ahead and turn this extension on. So you'll see a lot of HGs. That's a chemical symbol for Mercurial. And the commands for queues, there are pushes and pops and different things like that. For generic Mercurial, we're going to do the queues, and a lot of those commands begin with the letter Q. So that's when I do Q pop and Q push. Those are all Mercurial queue things. So what I'm going to do is just show you this ticket that I've been working on the last couple of days. This is a submission by Pong, who will be here later in the week. So this is on the trac developer database. These are where bug reports go and where contributions and things are all managed. And as part of this description is this whole top part, and usually that's put in when the ticket's created, describing what's going on. The release manager likes to have a list of patches that need to be applied, because there may be some that have been that are out of date or obsolete, or there may be some that are piled on top of others, or people will just start over. It's hard to read through the history on a ticket and know exactly what you should be applying. So that's good for us too if you get in on some new ticket, if somebody's been careful and put all the right things here. So this ticket is nice for a demonstration because it has 4 patches here. A patch is a set of changes to the source code. So lines will be leaving, lines will be coming in. That will reflect edits that have been made. There's usually a little bit of context around those to help the programs that use patches locate them in the source files. I clicked on one of those links. What you get in trac are nice, the colors coming through, yeah. Green is stuff that's entering, and this is the original patch, and Pong is creating a delete columns routine for matrices and a corresponding delete rows. So he's adding just 2 new big routines, so those are all brand new lines, the green stuff that's happening there. And there's line numbers there for the original file and the adjusted file, and there's some information up near the top. This is in response, I think, to some of my comments about what he did originally. So, for example, in Sage, we tend to say check equals something. He had something he was calling index check, and I said, just be better to say check, and that's what people tend to use. So the red stuff there is changes to his new contributions, and then what he's changed it to in the green there. So you can read these files quickly. You can get a feel for the magnitude of a patch, what's going on. You only get a little bit of context, so you're not going to get the whole file, and if you don't understand how the routine works in the first place, you're not going to figure that out from looking at the patch file. So there's 4 of them here. These little itty bitty icons onto the right, those will get you the actual patch files. So I don't know what happens if I do that in my browser. Okay, it's just going to try and download it. We're not going to do that for the moment. Okay, but if you wanted to, that's how you could get the actual patch file. Okay. All right. So what I want to do, so that the game we're going to play here is that I have nothing to do. You or I have nothing to do with that patch, and we want to see if it works. We want to see what it does. We're possibly considering reviewing that. So. So I've got a lot of copies of Sage going here. Let's try the beta 2 there. Okay, so this is what you would call Sage root. So if you read stuff or you're talking to somebody, this is the top level of a version of Sage that I have installed on my laptop. So you would have some other version. I typically want to change down to devel/Sage. Okay. And there is a Mercurial repository in there. So there's a collection of all the changes that have been made. And a good way to make sure and see if you have Mercurial up and running and you're in the right place is to, so HG is the command for Mercurial, is just ask for the log. And those are all the changes that have been made to Sage since probably about the first year or so that it started. And they're just going to fly by, and we're back to 2006 there. So you can, of course, pipe that through some kind of a pager. I use less. And then you can see that that topmost change has been tagged as by the release manager, Jeroen de Meyer, as 5.1 beta 2. Okay? So I know I've got Sage, I sort of know I'm in the right place. Now what I want to do is start bringing in those patches from the ticket. So I want to get those and use them with my version of Sage. So that's where this little itty bitty icon over here is nice. If I click on that and I copy that link location, so that's what I use in my menus in Firefox. I can do HG import, and the whole big long URL that I just copied off that little itty bitty icon. Something to look out for, you'll make this mistake, raw attachment. You'll just not be paying attention and you'll click on the big blue link like you're used to, and you'll be trying to suck in the HTML for the red-green view as your patch, and it's not going to work. And it will probably do something, but you'll wonder why nothing happened. So I always just sort of eyeball and make sure I got that raw attachment on there.
Okay. I'm confused behind you. Which is, are you, so there are 4 patches.
Right, I'm working with the first one in the list.
The very first one, okay.
And I clicked on the little icon to the far right with a right click in my case, and copied the actual URL for that attachment. Okay. Okay, sorry, I made a mistake. So I did an import, all right, and I'm not even sure what that does. That's a Mercurial command. Okay, I wanted to do a Q import, and I don't think that's going to cause me any trouble. But let's see.
It will, because you've already got the patch. You should just get rid of that top thing with HG rollback.
Okay, can I do that now after that?
Yeah, you can just do it right now.
Great, so I should just, I haven't done anything, so I should
yeah.
just do a Q import.
You should do a Q import rather than import.
Yes, right. Or, okay. Then instead do HG strip tip. And now do HG heads to confirm. Okay, yeah, so now you've undone that import.
So this is why I use Qs and I don't use regular Mercurial, because I don't know all that stuff. All right, so you have something called a series file. You have a list of patches, okay? And I just did I'm using abbreviations and I shouldn't. So HGQ series, okay?
Okay, so I'm behind. So the rollback was.
Forget, that's because I made a mistake.
Okay, so I didn't.
Ignore the
straight-
rollback
that's
and the
straight tip
heads.
I don't need to do either.
That's just me correcting, that's because I
Okay,
did
and what about-
import
and what
instead of
about the
Q.
HG heads?
You don't need that either.
You don't
None
need
of
that
stuff.
either.
Okay.
As far as you're concerned, I did a Q import and I
With the Q-
supplied the
And
link.
then do a Q series.
I'm talking about that right now,
Okay, cool.
so you're not behind on that. So I just did a Q import with the link to the patch, and all the other stuff was because I forgot the letter Q.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so there are 4 patches, they're numbered 1 through 4, and they have very similar names. So I'm not gonna try and write their names down because I'll get confused and you'll get confused. But right now, we've brought in patch number 1. Okay? And that's what you're seeing when I do the series there, HDQ series. All right? Okay. I want to take that patch and make those changes to my source code, to my version of Sage. Okay, so all I've really done is brought that information locally into my machine here, into my Sage installation. I want to actually have that change the information that I've got. So I'm going to do a Q push. Okay, that's going to take the patch file and try and make the changes. So that's going to add Pong's 2 new routines, basically. Okay, so applying is a good thing. That's good news when it says applying right there. This can fail if the context changes. So if you get a really old patch and the information that's helping locate the changes has changed, it will complain. That's not a good thing. You're not happy about that. Okay? All right. With me, Bruce?
Yep.
Good. Okay, patch number 2. I'm going to right-click and copy the URL for that. I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to Q import and paste in that whole big long URL. And again, I'm looking to see that it says raw attachment. Okay? Okay. Now it's been added to my series file. Now there's an important distinction that I can make at this point. Patch number 1 has been applied to my code. Those changes have taken effect. If I was to go open up the source file, and we'll do that in a minute. If I was to go open up the source file, I would see Pong's 2 new routines in there. Number 2 is changes that Pong has made to his contribution based on my suggestions, such as how to word the index check. Okay? That has not been applied right now. I've just pulled that in. There's a magic little pointer that's being maintained, and I'll show you how to see where it is in just a minute. The stuff above the pointer is applied, and that has taken effect on your source code. The stuff below the pointer is just hanging out. You have it, but it has not changed your source code. Okay? So the things above that pointer, they've been applied, and the things down below are unapplied. Okay? And the way you tell is you do HG apply, Q applied, Q applied, Q on everything. Okay? So that's the original 2 new routines that Pong wrote. That's an unapplied one. Now I got a little gizmo. I'll type my, I'll do my HGRC. There's a little add-on you can do. I think Keisha might have turned me onto this that colors these for you. So Kevin, yesterday you didn't see colors when we were doing this. Okay, I got colors, and it colors my applied and unapplied. It just helps me out. So if I was to wiggle.hgrc, sorry. Color highlighting right there. So right below, so these are extensions, I guess, yeah. So where the hgext.mq went, if you just add a color equals, you'll get this nice color view. So that's part of your h.hgrc file in your home directory, yeah.
By the way, the hgext dot is deprecated, so you don't need to use that anymore. You can
Okay.
just delete that part.
All right, just put MQ or nothing?
Just MQ equals.
Okay, all right, so Keyshaw is saying that doesn't need to be there anymore. Okay, thanks. And Keyshaw could explain to us, get equals true makes better patches.
Yeah, Mercurial's author is of the mind that you shouldn't really use patches to represent change sets. So the default format of a patch that Mercurial produces actually lacks some of the information that is actually in the commit, because the author says that shouldn't matter. You shouldn't really be trying to send all your changes in a patch anyway. Whereas the authors of Git have a different philosophy, which is that if you want to, you should be able to try to get as much information into the patch file as possible. So the Git format of patches is more complete and includes stuff like if you change a binary file, a Mercurial patch won't be able to represent that. If you change the executable bit on file permissions, Mercurial patch won't be able to display that, and various other things. So it's good to use git equals true when you're working on a software project which just uses patches and not pushing and pulling. So, for example, Sage.
Okay, all right. If I do HGQ series, I get the whole color. I get the green that are applied and the red that are sort of in waiting and technically unapplied. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and push that second patch on. Okay, so that has changed my source code. A way to think about that is that this magic little pointer is now moved down a level. It's sitting right there. Okay. All right. I'm gonna do something I tried to do with Kevin and I made a mess of. I'm gonna try and pull in the next two patches and apply them. Okay, as a group. When you pull in a patch, it goes right here, sort of below the pointer, the way I've got things written right here. Okay, so I'm going to bring in number 4, and then I'm going to bring in number 3, and number 3 is going to come in between 4 and 3, and in the right order. Okay, so it's going to appear that I'm doing things out of order as I work with the patches. So I'm going to grab the link for number 4. HGQ import, Control Shift paste, and then I'm going to go back and see, I almost tried to grab the link on the red green view. Copy link location, that's number 3 that I'm working on right now, and I'm going to do HGQ import, Control Shift paste. Okay, what should have happened, we'll double check. What should have happened is that when I brought, the first thing that I did was to bring in 4 just below the pointer in the unapplied stack, if you will. And I left myself a little bit of room. But 3 is going to come in when I did that second. 3 is going to come in just below the pointer. Okay, so when you import, you add new patches to this list with this pointer, and they always come in just below the pointer. Okay. I hope. Let's take a look. Okay. So you go back and look at the ticket, and that's the order they should be in. That's the order the ticket says they should be applied. Okay. I've got 2 applied, those are the green. I've got 2 unapplied, those are the red. I'm now going to push both along at once. So I'm going to do Q push, and I'm going to push everything. That's a dash all. I'm going to push everything that's unapplied. I'm just going to let it rip. Okay. So you see it applying 2, and then it's basically giving me some idea of where the pointer is. Now the pointer doesn't point at anything. It's in between. It's telling me what the most recently applied patch is. So when it says I'm at that reviewer patch, it's technically saying, let's move the pointer based on what we just did. That pointer has now come down to right here. Okay? All right, so we've taken everything on the ticket and we've made those changes to the source code in the order desired. I am 2 levels down from the Sage executable. I do not have Sage in my path because, as you saw, I have like 10 copies of Sage and I would never know which one was in my path. So I always just put a complete path name to my executable. So this is not a directory, this is the Sage executable that's up 2 levels right under Sage root. And the nice thing about Sage is you always pretty much get a whole complete development environment. You're certainly very ready to go and can easily develop with Sage. We've just applied some patches, which is an automated way of editing source files. Now I'm going to rebuild Sage, and I hope I just rebuild a little bit of it. I can't remember if I have. Yeah, okay. So these patches, that's going to stop in a second, I think. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you won't see all of this every time. But that was pretty quick, because I'd only made small changes. These are changes to the matrix code, and if you went and looked at the patches, you would see that they are part of the file matrix1.px. So that's a good thing that I see matrix 1's being messed with. So my changes were actually recognized by the build system as changes that needed to be recompiled. Okay, and that's happened. So I should now have a new running version of Sage. I can arrow up and just get rid of the -B and actually run Sage at the command line. And if I was to test my patch, I could build a little matrix with 4 rows and 5 columns and the numbers 0 through 19 in it. And then I could experiment. So del should be delete row or delete column, and if I've got those new functions, tab completion should show them to me. And I could say delete rows, let's delete row 2 and row 0 and out of order and see what happens. Let's just go ahead and duplicate one. You know, so if you're reviewing a ticket, you want to try all kinds of crazy stuff and try and break whatever's going on. Do I have a row 2 and a row 0? Yeah. Then it sends back a new matrix, and it's missing those rows. So cursory indication is that everything's working just fine. Okay? All right. Let's get out of that. And let's do a little bit of exploring. You've got an HG directory, right? That's why we're at devel/sage. And you see a bunch of stuff in there. The directory that's interesting to you there that's highlighted in blue is patches. So if I come back and take a look at what's in patches, there are the 4 patches that I imported. Those were not there a half hour ago. So that was the effect of an import, was to bring those patches in and park them in that directory. You'll see 2 files, the series and the status. So if I do HG/patches/series, that is basically the 4 patches that are in this list right here. Okay. There is another file in here called status. And there are big, huge hashes out there on your left, and then the same 4 file names. So it's very similar right now to what the series file looked like. Okay? All right, so I think I want to put Sage back into its normal state. All right? So I'm going to do a pop. So that's how you move stuff off the applied stack. That's how you unapply a patch. And you don't have to say what it's going to be. The first thing, the most recently applied thing. So this was the dash reviewer patch. That's going to come off. Those changes aren't going to be in effect anymore. So I can pop that. Now it tells me where I'm at. Told me it popped it, tells me where I'm at. And again, that's the most recently applied patch. So the effect right there was to move this magic pointer up like that. Okay? Now if I look at the series file again, Those are the same 4 patches. Series file hasn't changed. Okay. Oops. If I was to look at the status file, the file that I just popped is gone. Okay. So what is applied is what's in the status file. Everything you have is in the series file. And the unapplied is the difference between those two. It's what's missing. Okay. So if you get confused a little bit about what you've done or haven't done, you can sometimes go look at these files and get maybe a better idea, maybe not. Don't ever edit them. So don't mess around in that directory. Don't rename files in that directory. Don't pull them out. Don't edit your series file. Don't touch anything in there. Okay. So as far as you're concerned, that's a read-only directory. But sometimes it's interesting. Okay, I'm going to come over. What am I in? 5.1 beta 2. So I'm going to open. That's beta 3. 5.1 beta 2. So there's always this question. Sage, in the course of building, Sage tends to make 2 extra copies of a source file. And when you first get started, I think it's very confusing to know where you should be and what you should be messing around with. So you noticed I went down to devel, and then Sage is actually a symbolic link to Sage main. And then it seems redundant, but there's a doc directory. If we got it into documentation, that's where you'd want to go look for results of building documentation. But then there's yet another Sage, and that's the real Sage library. And then you start to feel like you're on familiar ground, and you can see things that look like mathematics. There is a matrix directory. It's a little confusing. The matrix code is split up into matrix 0, matrix 1, and matrix 2, and it's just because the files got out of hand. It really serves no purpose other than to minimize compile time and confuse novices. py is a Python file. That shouldn't be too confusing. Pyrex was a project to convert Python into C and then compile C code. The Sage developers eventually made a friendly fork of Pyrex into Python. All of those files still have a PYX extension from Pyrex days. So it would be confusing to say this is a Python file that is .pyx, but that's the way it goes, right? And that is typically faster code or more intensive stuff. You can still write pure Python in a Pyrex file, and that's what you'll see in matrix 1. So this is, I just know from looking at the patches and working with these that this, and you could figure this out fairly quickly. This is where, so def is a good way if you're hunting for something like this. There's def delete columns. And I've got the resolution kind of cranked down, so this for the projector, so this looks a little bit messy, but and those gray bars are lines that are getting wrapped. But there's the code for deleting a column. All right. I'm going to go back. Where's my magic pointer in the right place? Okay. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to qpop again. Okay. So we've got 1 unapplied, 3 applied, and I'm going to do a qpop. My editor brings itself into focus, throws up a dialog, and says, some other program just messed with this file that you have open. Okay, so that's why I didn't open it earlier. I wanted to do some pushes and pops and not have this go on. But I wanted to show you this. You would like to experiment with some play patches and see how your editor responds. Okay, so Kevin yesterday was using gedit, and when he goes back to gedit, he gets a big warning bar, but it doesn't sort of come into focus like Kate just did for me. The worst thing would be that your editor does nothing, and you've pushed and popped, and your source code has changed, and then you're off editing in some version of your file that's not in sync with what's actually living on your disk until you do a save, and then you'd really be messed up, I think. Okay. So I know, and Kevin gets a different set of choices in gedit, and I just know that reload is the best thing for me to do in this. And reload is what I want to have happen. Okay. So we didn't actually see what changes were there. We'll come back when we've actually popped everything off, and delete columns will be totally gone. Okay. So let's bring back my terminal. And I'm lying, but I've forgotten where I am. There's the series file. And it's good to do, if you don't have the color stuff turned on, we've got 2 applied, and we've got 2 unapplied. Oops. It's not a G. It's HQ, HG. Okay, we've got 2 that are unapplied. You can push and pop whole bunches of patches by specifying the name of the patch that you want to be the last applied patch. Okay? So, actually, I'm out of sync here on the board. Now, let's suppose, okay, so this is not where we are, but let's suppose we had all 4 applied. I could do HGQ pop and then provide the name of this patch right here. And that would pop 2 things off and leave this as the first applied, the most recently applied patch, okay? Suppose I didn't have anything applied. I could do HGQ push and give the name of the second patch, and then it would become the most recently applied patch. So that's not symmetric. You say what you want to be the last applied patch, whether you're doing a massive push or a massive massive push or a massive pop, okay? So we're right there, right? So I could do that. HGQ pop. Let's suppose I want to get down to just having 1 patch left. Okay. So that's the name of patch number 1. Now, of course, if I just did HGQ pop where I am right now, I would pop number 2 and I would be at number 1. Okay. But if I provide the name of number 1, that's where it should put me. And of course, I have this file open, so that's going to happen every time I make a change. HGQ series. Okay. So, we are at this stage now. And of course, I think I did a push all, there's a pop all, HG, Q pop, dash. Now you can sort of see it there. So there's the delete columns that was in the source code. And I'm going to go ahead and say reload, and it's going now. All right. So we're back to Virgin Sage, okay? Now you of course do not have, you still have an executable on your disk that does not match your source code at the moment. See, there's no recompiling has happened. So we can go back. Easier just to type it. We can come back and rebuild. And we should be back to good old Sage as if nothing had ever happened. Okay? So that's what you would do if you wanted to review or experiment with somebody else's patches off a ticket. The next thing to do is to show you how to originate your own changes and manage those and make a patch and put that on track. But this is a good place to stop if there's questions about bringing patches in, pushing them on and off and on and off, and working with a list of patches. You can rearrange the patches that are unapplied by pushing them with a -- move. So you can go HG Q push -- move, and then you can go way back in your unapplied list and pick some patch out that you want to push on. So you can push them on out of order if you use a -- move. And that didn't exist when I first started. It's nice when it showed up. So having told you not to edit the series file, I used to go and edit the series file because that was the only way to reorganize your, if you had patches from several tickets and you wanted to move some in out of the way and put some others higher in order. There's a Q remove. So once you've unapplied a patch, you do Q remove, and it's totally gone. It's not sitting in that patches directory anymore. It's like it never happened. When you import the HTML red-green view, which you will do, then you need to Q remove it because it has the same name as the patch you really want. You need to get it out of it. All right, ready to capture new changes? Okay. So here's the other sort of diagram that oh, we'll get back in sync. So we're right here right now, right? If you got a bunch of patches like we just had, 4 of them, and there's where your magic pointer sits, okay? When you do a Q import, I don't care what's going on, a Q import is going to bring you in just below that magic pointer. It is going to be the most recently unapplied patch, or the next one to be applied. That's why I did 3 and 4 out of order. We are going to start a new set of changes. New changes always begin applied. There's no change there. There's no there. But they begin as an applied patch. The presumption is you want to have those changes allowed. And the command I'm going to use right now is qnew. Okay. So if you're wondering where does a set of changes come into being, that's where they all begin, with a qnew. Nobody is ever going to see this name that you give your patch. So I always make this really loose and just what I need to know. You don't need a track number. Doesn't have to reflect the content. Nothing. Now, you may choose to stay organized, and you may want a track number. You may want a nice description that helps you stay organized. But what you choose to put here, nobody's ever going to see but you. Okay? So what did I just do? I just qnewed something, and we had nothing applied. I still have my 4 delete row, delete column patches hanging out, but I just put something on the applied stack, if you will, above the pointer. Okay, so let's do something. So let's come back here, and let's do. I was doing this with Kevin yesterday, right, Kevin? Mm-hmm. It was yesterday. Seems like a long time ago. I can't type. You're rapidly discovering that. Okay, so I'm in this function def columns. So this is going to take. I'm in matrix 1 still. This is going to give you all the columns of a matrix. And I've just messed with it. I've added, the first thing it's going to do is a print statement. Before it does anything interesting or any error checking, it's going to do a print, hello Sage Days. Okay? I have not saved this file, so my editor is telling, it's modified up here. I haven't done a save. So all the changes are sitting in my editor right now. So I'm going to go ahead and save those changes. qdiff. Now, Mercurial has a diff as well, and there's some situation where they're slightly different, but I can never figure it out or reproduce it, and I don't know. Thank you.
So hgdiff will tell you what you haven't yet put into qnew, and hgqdiff will give you everything you haven't put into qnew plus whatever the latest applied patch did.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Well, there you have it. Thanks. Yeah. So I think in this case they're the same thing, right? That's why I can't always tell what's going on. So this is a lot of what a patch looks like. The minuses are a file where stuff is leaving. The pluses are a file where stuff is coming in, and they're of course the same file in this example. And all we've done is add something, so there's a plus in front of that line. So that's what you would see, a green line in the red-green view on the web. But this is what an actual patch file pretty much looks like, and that's what you're going to get from this diff command. ls.hg/patches. Okay, so there's that directory you're only supposed to read, and there's a Sage Days file in there. That came into life when I did hgqnew. Okay? I'm going to look at it with less. What did I call this? Sage Days. There's nothing in there basically. So those are comments, and there's a hash and all that. But my change is not in that patch file right now. Okay. So what's going on, I edited the source, I saved those changes over in the source file in my Sage distribution. qdiff and diff are showing me that there is that change. But they have not migrated to the patch file that Mercurial is maintaining down in HG, that you're not even supposed to really look at. Certainly not going to edit, okay? hgqrefresh. Okay. So what qrefresh is going to do is take those changes between the source and whatever was there before we started and migrate those into the patch file. So if I arrow up and look at that Sage Days patch again, now I see that thing down in .hg patches, Sage Days actually contains the change that I made. I often forget to qrefresh. So I do a little bit of work like a reviewer patch, and then I put it up there and it's got no content. It's because I forgot to refresh. Yes?
So when you use qrefresh, it's usually a good idea to use $D, because that will also refresh the date and time stamp that's in the patch to be the current date and time. So
Great.
just useful.
Yes, okay. Good. So especially if you've been working on something for a few weeks, I guess, and things like that. I've not been in the habit of doing that. So you learn stuff when you teach. All right. The other thing that you will need to do in the course of Sage development is put a message into your patch, okay? So when we did the log at the very beginning, I didn't point it out, but you may have noticed each patch has a little one-line summary. Each patch may have several lines. The default is just to show you one line. There have been suggestions of writing several lines of summary for patches. I have never in my life written more than one, but that isn't to say you shouldn't do that or whatever, okay? I've never looked for more than one. Okay, so, and that's part of qrefreshing, so I'm going to try and break some old capital D. Thank you. Capital D, and then I sometimes forget the little m, and then I'll help breaks loose. -M for message. You can bring up your editor or something like that. I've gotten in the habit of just doing this at the command line. The habit used to be to put a trac number. Requirements used to be that you put a trac number from the trac database in the front of that. Those are now being added automatically. So best practice would be not to put a number there. So that's a habit that I have to break. And I think you're going to get a number and a colon, so I think maybe I would expect lowercase would be a good idea. Okay? What was I supposed to say? Silly patch. Patch. Okay. About it, so a short little line. Delete rows and columns of a matrix would be appropriate for that set of patches we were just looking at. If you do hglog, you'll see several interesting things. The first thing you will notice is that the summary has migrated in as that line right there. So that's sometimes how I check and make sure that I've really added a message. Mercurial queues rides on top of the Mercurial infrastructure, and there's all these little tags. So there is this, where did it go? There's this queue parent right here. There's a queue tip and a queue base. You'll see a lot of tags, and Mercurial queues is temporarily putting a bunch of patches on top of the Mercurial repository. and it's making it easy for you to put those on and off, and you don't need to know things like roll back and strip and various commands like that.
In fact, strip doesn't even exist without MQ. MQ added the command strip in order to allow itself to get rid of its own patches when it needs to pop them.
Yeah, right, okay. So Mercurial is meant to be a history, and it's meant to be hard to go back and revise history. But then it makes it hard, I found it makes it hard to revise mistakes. So that's part of my attraction to Qs. All right. Okay, so we've saved our changes in the source file, we've refreshed to migrate them to a patch. Now would be a good time to rebuild Sage. Sage has a history, you know, at the command line there. So you can just arrow up and get back to your most recent stuff that you've typed, which is helpful when you're debugging something. If it's just a couple of commands to test something new, you can sometimes just arrow back up through them to get it back. So there's my matrix again, and we messed with columns, right? I don't think it takes any arguments. It's supposed to give me a list of columns of the matrix, but it also gave me hello Sage days. So for people that aren't into it, students that are not too familiar with software development, that's always a powerful feeling. I saw a little smile out of you. It's like, oh, I just changed Sage. That's pretty cool. It is pretty cool first time you do it. Okay. All right. All right, so you've got the satisfaction of changing Sage. How do you share that with the world? Okay? So how do you get those changes out in a form that I can apply them to beta 4, or that they can go up on the trac database and other people can get them, or in the case of Kevin getting started with Sage development, he can email them to me and I can email things to him, and we can just sort of share things privately as he's getting started. So export, so that's plain old Mercurial. I'm not forgetting my letter Q here. That's a Mercurial thing. And I need to specify one of those change sets. So I just showed you up there, that's Q tip. So the thing you're working on most recently, the top, I call it the top, the most recently applied, whatever, okay? That's Q tip, okay? That's where we are right now. Okay, and that will spit out a patch file. And you notice these are comments. This is why you did an HGRC, because it's got my name and my email address, and that will help people 3 years. That'll help William Stein 3 years later to track me down and accuse me of slowing down some matrix manipulation routine, and so on. Date, which I guess we updated, and these are keeping track of how the changes all go together, hashes. There's my comment. And we saw this kind of stuff before. You can see the plus there for what we actually added. Okay, so just a little bit of sort of meta information up on top compared to what we were seeing earlier. But that is a complete patch file. Now I did this command, and I just had that all come out on standard input at the command line. I want to save that someplace. So that's the redirection arrow. And I have, so just as a matter of keeping, or you can do whatever works for you, I have in my home directory, I have a Sage directory. And I have lots of pictures of Sage days and grant proposals and stuff in there, but I also have /patches. And every patch I've ever built goes in there. And if the University of Washington burns down, whatever, I've at least got my work. I've got the things that are unique to me all saved as a collection of patches, although they're replicated all over the place in repositories. I'm going to put this in temp because I don't really care about it. Here is where, okay, so now